Hello and welcome to a new series, Failed Franchises. On this series, I'll be looking at the failures of several train operating companies, which have either been stripped of their contract or have been deemed a failure by the industry and passengers alike. Today is perhaps the most recent and prominent example of the government stripping a train operating company of its franchise, that being Transpennine Express. The history of Transpennine Express services goes way back to the 1990s, when British Rail, under the Regional Railways brand, introduced the brand for its cross-Pennine services, operated by Class 158s and loco-hauled stock. Under privatisation, the brand was incorporated into the Northern Spirit/Arriva Trains North franchise, which included the whole Regional Railways North East franchise, creating a mega company that was difficult to manage and run. Northern Spirit incorporated their branding with their Class 158s being repainted into a maroon colour scheme with a golden N and Transpennine Express logo. Arriva Trains Northern continued to operate the same franchise with the same stock and branding. Eventually, in 2000, the decision was made by the Strategic Rail Authority to reorganise the Regional Railways North East franchise, run by Arriva Trains Northern, and the North West Regional Railways franchise, run by First North Western. The reorganisation would see all local and commuter services merged into one Northern franchise, with the longer distance regional and intercity services being made into a dedicated Transpennine Express franchise. The franchise was won by First Group Keolis, with the Arriva Trains Northern and First North Western services being transferred to the newly named First Transpennine Express on February 1, 2004. The remaining Northern commuter franchise was won by Serco Abellio and commenced on the same day. However, our interest lies in the Transpennine franchise and how it can be classed as a failed franchise. The Transpennine franchise started relatively small, with all services passing through Manchester Piccadilly. The new First Transpennine company also served Manchester Airport with 4 trains an hour, Leeds and Huddersfield also with 4 trains an hour, Hull, Scarborough, Cleethorpes, Middlesbrough and Newcastle to the north east with 1 train an hour, and in the north, Liverpool with 1 train an hour, and the services split between Barrow and Windermere, giving them 1 train per 2 hours. Services from Manchester Airport to York were operated on a 24-hour basis. We'll look a little later how the franchise expanded, but first, let's look at the original First Transpennine Express operations. The original contract for the joint venture was expected to end in 2011, with a clause for the franchise to end in 2014 and again in 2016, to coincide with the end date of the Northern Rail franchise. At the beginning of the franchise, Transpennine Express operated Class 158s and Class 175s that were on hire from Arriva Trains Wales. The main commitment of the original franchise was the replacement of the entire fleet, with several DMUs being looked at. The units needed to be able to reach 100 miles an hour, with their acceleration comparable to the Class 180s and Voyagers. As well as this, air conditioning, 2 toilets per vehicle, with 1 suitable for disabled passengers, large luggage and bike racks, CCTV in first class, was desired by the operator. In September 2003, First Transpennine Express announced that Siemens had signed a contract for 56 new DMUs to be constructed, although this was later reduced down to 51 by the Strategic Rail Authority. The units were specifically designed to converse the hilly terrain of the Pennines route, so were built with high power output, although this proved unnecessary and led to relatively low efficiency, with only a few routes benefiting from the increased power output. These new units, designated the Class 185s, entered service in 2006 and proved incredibly popular with off-peak travellers. However, they were not deemed to be suitable for peak services, with them becoming highly overcrowded at these times. To resolve overcrowding issues, First Transpennine Express leased 8 Class 170s from 2006 from South West Trains, with a 9th obtained from Central Trains shortly after. The 9 2-car 170s were used on Manchester to Cleethorpes, Hull and York services, with the 3-car 185s used across the entire network. By 2007, the Transpennine route was extended to serve Glasgow and Edinburgh, replacing Virgin Cross Country, with a new fleet of electric units desired to run these services, with the lines from Liverpool to Scotland being fully electrified in 2013. This in turn led to 10 Class 350-4s being ordered, with the first services to Manchester from Scotland running on the 30th of December 2013. This led to the Class 185s being relocated to other services, strengthening the fleet. These 10 4-car Class 350s proved popular with travellers, However, once again, overcrowding continued to be an issue across the franchise. This was exacerbated in March 2014, when the government and train owner Porterbrook announced that the 9 Class 170s would eventually be transferred to Chiltern Railways and converted to Class 168s to strengthen their new Oxford services. This was hugely criticised by many MPs and residents, such as Diana Johnson, MP for Hull, with several debates occurring in 2013 and 2014 regarding the issue. The unit cascadement was delayed until 2015 to allow TPE to acquire diesel replacements. The last 4 Class 170s left the fleet in 2016. The temporary replacements for the Class 170s were found in 6 Class 156s, which were hired from Northern. These 156s were supposed to boost the desperately deprived Northern franchise for services from Blackpool North. However, the 156s with First Transpennine Express didn't last too long, with the franchise being up for grabs by 2014. Keolis had now split from First Group and wanted to operate the franchise instead with Go-Ahead. However, First Group themselves won the new TPE franchise and commenced operations in April 2016, dropping the first branding and just calling themselves Transpennine Express. Following this franchise changeover, the 156s returned to Northern, with Transpennine Express now no longer operating to Windermere, Blackpool or Barrow. The new Transpennine Express franchise now operated services to Manchester, Sheffield, Cleethorpes, Liverpool, Preston, Lancaster, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Durham, Middlesbrough, Scarborough, York, Hull and finally Leeds. The branding also got changed, featuring a slick new black, blue and purple colour scheme, with their Class 350s and 185s receiving a new livery. But how did their services fare, and what led to this new TPE franchise being deemed a failure? Just before we get on to why, I just want to say thank you so much to any of my channel members or previous donators. A huge thank you to DB187, G Patterson, Jack's Railway Secrets and Lilo Rail for your donations/membership. If you want to join them, you can by pressing the join button next to the subscribe button on my channel. Thank you so much. Well, even prior to the new franchise, First Transpennine Express ran some of the busiest trains in the country, with most rush hour services being full and standing. In 2014, the chief executive of the TPE franchise suggested that there is not enough diesel rolling stock in the country. At peak, over 25% of commuters couldn't get a seat. The new Transpennine Express franchise had a chronic shortage of rolling stock, so very quickly into the franchise, in 2018, TPE announced Project Nova. This project would see the company transform into focusing its services on intercity style ones, rather than regional ones. However, they still intended to serve as a commuter operator, perhaps a flaw already in the project. The project would, more importantly, see 3 new fleets enter service to replace the Class 350s and allow the 185s to receive refurbishment and then strengthen other areas of the network. TPE signed deals for around £500 million with manufacturers CAF and Hitachi. The Nova fleet would be subdivided into 3 new sections, imaginatively named Nova 1, Nova 2 and Nova 3. Nova 1 was actually ordered under the previous franchise and would boost route capacity between Liverpool and Newcastle via York. These 19 5-car units would also be bi-mode and have a top speed of 125 mph, with options for 140 mph operation should the infrastructure ever permit. These units were designated Class 802s and would be built by Hitachi as part of their IET offering. The bi-mode offering, according to TPE's head of new trains, Robert Davis, would allow for the units to run under the wires for green operations, and then on diesel lines where overhead line electrification had not been constructed yet. Davis also pointed at the possibility of removing the diesel engines should electrification ever be wide enough, boosting efficiency by up to 15%. The Nova 2s would be 12 fully electric CAF Class 397s, built as part of their Civity range. These units would be used on services from Manchester Airport to Scotland and would be the only fully electric fleet the company had. The most controversial units would be the Nova 3s. These Class 68 diesel locomotives and Mark 5A carriages would operate from Manchester and York to Scarborough. The new Mark 5As, built by CAF, would be the first new carriages in Britain since the Mark 4s in the 1980s. The sets would utilise 14 Class 68 locomotives, built by Stadler, with 52 Mark 5As, utilising 14 driving trailers to negate the need for runarounds or extra locos. The Class 68s had been in service since 2014 and were highly infamous for their noise levels. Surely this couldn't affect TPE though. All of the Nova trains first entered service in 2019, but did they help to ensure the franchise would be less overcrowded and more punctual? Well, we all know the answer here is no, but why it is no is a bit more interesting. By 2020, COVID had hit, and the operator was given an emergency measures contract until May 2023. After the worst of the pandemic was over, TPE were instantly hit with nationwide rail strikes, leading to major staff shortages. As TPE tried to ramp up their service to pre-COVID levels, in October 2022, TPE cancelled 30% of their services within a week during half-term, most of these services being P-coded cancellations. A P-code cancellation is where the operator cancels the trains but does not show them on the system. This is usually used for planned cancellations, such as engineering work, and allows the operator to cancel services without them showing as cancelled on the passenger systems, which would in turn confuse passengers if there was engineering work going on. TPE were effectively abusing the system to falsely claim that their cancellations were lower than what they actually were. The Offered for Rail and Road statistics showed that TPE reported cancellations of 5.6% and 11.8% in October and November 2022. This is compared to the nearly 20% of services that were actually cancelled in the 2 months. These P-coded cancellations could be put on the systems the night before, so when passengers woke up the next day, they would find their service had just disappeared, with no way to claim delay repay, as the cancellation did not appear on the industry systems. Many of these cancellations were to the airport at Manchester, with 25% of services to Manchester Airport from September to November 2022 being cancelled or terminated short of the airport. This led to a nearly 30% drop in people taking public transport to the airport, with Chris Woodruff, the airport's managing director, suggesting it was causing significant cost and inconvenience for passengers. Andy Burnham, Manchester Mayor, suggested the loophole was for the interest of the train companies and their profits only, claiming the loophole to be outrageous. Between the 17th and 25th of November, a total of 294 TP services had been cancelled the night before, and many weren't shown on industry systems. 77 of these were on the Cleethorpes line alone, leaving many people on the line without a rail service to Manchester. TPE suggested the cancellations were due to high levels of train crew sickness and an intensive crew training programme, which had huge backlogs due to COVID, which didn't let the company train the staff needed to run the services required. Going into 2023, things didn't get much better for the company. During the first reporting period of 2023, 1,000 TPE trains were at least partially cancelled, with TPE still using P-coding as a loophole to get around staff shortages. The official reporting cancellation figure was 5.8% for March 2023, but this was actually as high as 17% when taking into account P-coded cancellations. However, this was still much better than the 25% cancellation rate seen in January 2023. However, the fact TPE celebrated this decrease suggests just how bad it got. Labour were quick to jump on the bandwagon, claiming the Conservatives were to blame for giving the franchise to First TPE in the first place. By April 2023, the government was seriously considering removing TPE's franchise altogether, suggesting that all options were on the table. By May, the service had not improved, with customers slamming TPE for the service becoming less frequent, less reliable, slower and more expensive. It got so bad that many people gave up on TPE, using coaches, buses, Ubers and mainly cars to complete their journeys, with TPE gaining national attention on news networks for its awful service. Eventually, the government had enough, and to perhaps increase the DfT's reputation and scare other train operators, the TPE franchise was stripped from First and brought under government control on the 28th of May 2023. Since the government has taken control of TPE, there hasn't been a huge change in service, although cancellations have been down, with most of them now being around 5%, and P-coding being decreased. Overcrowding has not decreased. And this has been made worse with the Nova 3 Class 68 Mark 5A sets being withdrawn from service during the December 2023 timetable. The main reason for the removal of these 12 5-car sets is due to noise complaints regarding the Class 68, as well as technical issues regarding the Mark 5As. Hence a huge part of TPE's fleet has been withdrawn, with reliance on the Class 185s higher than expected, leading to huge overcrowding. Personally, I've seen this overcrowding firsthand when I visited Stalybridge last year to ride one of the Mark 5A sets before they got withdrawn. Attempting to return to Manchester, I was physically unable to board the first Manchester-bound service, with the guard telling me to take the next one, which was also full, but at least this time I could board. TPE is still then a pretty bad operator, but I think it's something that will remain the same regardless of who runs it, until there is some proper investment. The franchise needs more diesel units, although this is something the whole UK needs. Look at the likes of Cross Country, Great Western Railway and Chiltern for example. However, the infrastructure needs improving too. Electrification, platform extensions, station expansion, signalling, all things that could and should happen to ensure the North keeps up with the South. Although the Transpennine route is currently occurring between Manchester, Huddersfield and Leeds, this isn't happening until at least 2036, with the current infrastructure being Victorian, with it basically falling apart. So in conclusion then, the Transpennine franchise has always been a very difficult franchise to run, with first doing a pretty decent job up until the 2020s, with the government hopefully being able to, after the elections in 2024, being able to invest in our railways, and TPE can flourish, finally becoming a truly good operator, rather than a failed franchise. Thank you very much for watching this first episode in a series that I hope will have 5 or 6 episodes. Let me know in the comments who I should focus on next, potentially Northern, or maybe Arriva Trains Wales. Who knows? Let me know in the comments below. Do consider liking and subscribing if you have enjoyed this episode, and also do consider joining my channel. For as little as $2.99 you can get some cool perks, such as watching all my videos early, as well as getting shoutouts in every video. Thank you ever so much for watching. Goodbye.